6-month pregnant wife catches billionaire husband in bed with mistress. The ultimate betrayal. Shadows flickered across the marble walls as Isabella tiptoed through the grand hallway, her heart pounding in her chest. 6 months pregnant and struggling to breathe, she could barely contain the swirl of dread engulfing her. There were hushed voices behind the heavy oak door, voices that sent ice through her veins. She had returned home unexpectedly, longing for her husband's embrace, only to discover something more sinister. The billionaire lifestyle she'd once cherished now felt like a cage. Her mind reeled, refusing to accept the unthinkable. She reached shakily for the doorknob, bracing herself for a nightmare come alive. Isabella Garcia Rothwell had always believed that love could conquer any obstacle. She remembered falling for James Rothwell under the shimmering lights of a Manhattan ballroom, enthralled by his confident charm and the air of mystery that surrounded him. They were the ultimate power couple, heir to a massive fortune, and she, an aspiring artist who had grown up in a modest Bronx household. Their worlds collided in a storm of passion when James, in a moment of rebellious defiance against his family's rigid expectations, rescued Isabella from an awkward situation at a charity event. That night, Isabella had been a bundle of nerves, still unfamiliar with the etiquette demanded by high society gatherings. She had worn a borrowed gown that was a size too big and clutched a glass of sparkling water as though it were her lifeline. A tipsy socialite nearly toppled into her, but James stepped in, gracefully guiding Isabella away from the fiasco. Their eyes locked, and in that moment she swore she could see a softness beneath his polished demeanor. He introduced himself with disarming warmth, and she found herself entranced. Their courtship had been the stuff of fairy tales. James whisked her away to exclusive restaurants in New York City like the Polo Bar or Le Bernardine, where she would marvel at the opulence, still in awe that a humble girl from the Bronx could inhabit these rarefied spaces. Over time, Isabella learned that James's late mother had once been a talented painter, inspiring the young man to develop an appreciation for the arts. He claimed Isabella's creativity reminded him of his mother's spirit, and their bond grew deeper with each shared confidence. Yet the true turning point came when James took her to meet his father, the formidable Robert Rothwell, patriarch of the Rothwell Empire. Robert was known for his no-nonsense approach to business and family. He regarded Isabella with skepticism, clearly wondering if she possessed the resilience to match the relentless demands of his son's lifestyle. Isabella held her ground with grace, never letting Robert's daunting stature intimidate her. That encounter ended with Robert sending her a polite but chilly farewell, though he admitted he saw some promise in her. In time, James proposed in the midst of a romantic getaway to Lake Como. He presented an antique engagement ring once owned by his great-grandmother. Overwhelmed and certain that destiny had led them to each other, Isabella said yes. Their wedding took place at the historic Vanderbilt mansion in Hyde Park. It was a lavish affair, featuring hundreds of guests, politicians, celebrities, and business magnates alike. Isabella's parents, Antonio and Lucia Garcia, were proud yet visibly overwhelmed, stepping into a world so drastically different from their own. But the moment that truly mattered was James's vow. He promised to protect and cherish Isabella forever. In those blissful early months of marriage, Isabella felt like she was living in a dream. Their penthouse overlooked Central Park, a place she grew to love for peaceful morning walks. She continued painting, with James purchasing a small gallery in the Upper East Side to showcase her work. Although her paintings sold sporadically, James insisted that her passion deserved a platform. Life was a whirlwind of extravagant galas, charity committees, art auctions, and lavish trips abroad. Isabella tried her best to stay grounded, remembering the home-cooked meals and laughter-filled evenings with her close-knit family in the Bronx. It was during this phase of marital bliss that Isabella reconnected with an old friend, Monica Caldwell. Monica had been Isabella's confidant during their high school years, someone who pulled her aside whenever bullies targeted her shabby shoes or outdated jeans. After graduation, Monica's life took her across the country to Los Angeles, where she pursued a career in event management. They had kept in touch sporadically, but technology turned out to be no substitute for real-life closeness. When Monica moved back to New York, Isabella welcomed her with open arms, eager to fold her best friend into her new circle. Monica was ambitious, fun-loving, and unapologetically bold. She quickly adapted to the glitzy circles Isabella inhabited. She accompanied Isabella to fashion shows, mingling with designers like Michael Kors and Diane von Furstenberg. She even managed to charm Robert Rothwell, who rarely gave anyone outside the family so much as a second glance. Everyone seemed to adore Monica, her quick wit, her striking style, her magnetic personality that drew people in. Perhaps it was that same adventurous spirit that later spelled trouble. After Isabella became pregnant, life should have been perfect. She and James shared emotional mornings over prenatal vitamins, argued playfully over baby names he liked more traditional ones like Victoria or Alexander, while she preferred unique names inspired by her favorite painters. He pampered her in every way possible, from foot massages to surprising her with a custom-built crib featuring intricate carvings of flowers. She thought, in those first few months of pregnancy, that she had never been happier. Yet the first hint of trouble didn't come from James or from Monica, but from a shift in her own emotions. Isabella couldn't quite pinpoint when she started feeling uneasy. Perhaps it was that night in early April when James, after a late phone call, left their bed, claiming he had urgent business matters to handle, or the time he cancelled a prenatal appointment at the last minute, apologizing with a cursory text. At 6 months pregnant, Isabella was more sensitive than ever, her instincts sharper. Something was off. Still, she tried to brush aside these suspicions. She reminded herself that James was the head of a sprawling business empire that required constant travel, negotiations, and unpredictable hours. He might be working late to finalize a deal involving the expansion of Rothwell Corporation's holdings in Europe. She tried not to be the clingy wife who didn't understand the burdens of a billionaire's responsibilities. However, a nagging voice in her head refused to quiet down. Monica noticed Isabella's growing apprehension. Late one night, after a fancy dinner fundraiser for a children's hospital, Monica pulled Isabella aside. "Is everything okay?" she asked, eyes full of concern. Isabella tried to laugh it off. "Probably just hormones," she said, hugging her belly. But as Monica embraced her in a comforting hug, Isabella's eyes flickered over Monica's shoulder and landed on James across the room, his face drawn, his posture tense, while he texted someone. He appeared anxious, and when he caught Isabella looking, he forced a quick smile before slipping the phone back into his pocket. Monica stayed over that night in their guest suite. Isabella had grown to appreciate having Monica around, especially whenever James was away on business. They would watch late-night comedy shows, binge on ice cream, and look through baby catalogs. Monica always managed to brighten up the penthouse with her presence. Yet, ironically, the more time Monica spent at the penthouse, the more Isabella felt something intangible drifting between them all. As Isabella's baby bump grew, so did the tension. James grew more distant, missing important pregnancy milestones. Instead, it was Monica who offered to accompany Isabella to a prenatal yoga class. Monica who helped her pick out paint colors for the nursery. Monica who rubbed Isabella's aching feet and assured her that she was glowing. If anything, Isabella was grateful that at least someone close to her was present during these critical months. She convinced herself that James's absences were merely a product of a stressful business environment. One morning, Isabella found a half-finished cup of coffee in the study, a brand she never drank. James preferred black coffee, no sugar, while Isabella stuck to herbal tea during her pregnancy. She chalked it up to an absent-minded slip. Another evening, an unfamiliar fragrance lingered in the air, sweet and floral, not her usual perfume. She blamed her oversensitive nose. But then came the receipts. Actual physical receipts James carelessly left in his jacket pockets, detailing pricey dinners for two at exclusive restaurants she had never frequented with him. Flowers billed to his personal credit card, delivered to an address in Midtown, a hotel suite booking at the Mark, under a pseudonym, each piece of evidence hammered at her heart. Yet she hesitated to confront him. How could she fling accusations when she was pregnant and terrified of inciting a storm? Monica advised Isabella to talk it out with James. Communication is key, she told her one afternoon over lunch, but something in Monica's gaze felt fleetingly guarded, as if holding back an opinion. Isabella dismissed it. After all, Monica would never betray her. They'd known each other far too long, and maybe Monica was correct. Maybe she should just ask James directly. So Isabella mustered the courage to approach him. She waited until after dinner, letting him unwind, then gently broached the subject of the receipts. James reacted with defensiveness. "How dare you go through my pockets?" he snapped, though his voice softened when he saw the tears welling in Isabella's eyes. He pulled her into his arms, apologizing for being short-tempered. He spun a carefully crafted story. The dinners were with high-profile investors, and he used a pseudonym at the Mark because some deals required discretion. The flowers, he claimed, were for an investor's wife who had helped him negotiate a major contract. "Trust me, Bella," he murmured, using her nickname. "I would never hurt you." Desperate to believe him, Isabella nodded and let him hold her. She needed to cling to that illusion of stability. Days turned into weeks, and tensions receded briefly. But just beneath the surface, Isabella's heartbreak simmered, fueled by the suspicion that James was lying. After all, she had noticed him receiving calls at odd hours, stepping onto the balcony to speak in hushed tones. When she asked if he was traveling soon, he dodged the question, saying only that big business decisions loomed on the horizon. The situation reached a fever pitch one evening when Isabella fell ill. She collapsed with dizziness in the living room, terrified she was losing the baby. Frantic, she called James, no answer. She called Monica, straight to voicemail. Panic seized her. She was rushed to the hospital by their driver. Only at 2 a.m. did James show up, disheveled and apologetic. He claimed he had lost his phone at a private function, and by the time he realized, he was hours away from Manhattan. The doctor recommended bed rest for a few days, suspecting that stress and fatigue were overwhelming Isabella's body. Concerned for her health, James took a day off from his hectic schedule to stay by her bedside. He kissed her forehead, brought her flowers, and made heartfelt promises that he would be more attentive. Isabella wanted to believe him. She wanted to think that maybe everything was just a series of unfortunate misunderstandings. However, the day she caught James in bed with Monica would shatter every fragile hope she had clung to. That dreadful day began like any other, except Isabella decided to leave her doctor's appointment earlier than planned. She had finished her checkup quickly and thought she would surprise James with lunch at home. Perhaps it was an attempt to reconnect, to find some intimacy lost in the swirl of suspicion. As the driver dropped her off, Isabella felt a jolt of excitement. She stepped into the elevator, humming softly, her hand resting protectively on her pregnant belly. Yet as soon as she entered the penthouse, an unsettling quiet greeted her. James's security detail was nowhere to be seen, which was unusual. The staff had apparently been sent away. From the corridor, she heard muffled voices and something that sounded like laughter. She followed the noise, each step making her heart pound wildly. Her gut twisted with dread that she was about to uncover something she could never forget. When she opened the bedroom door, the sight she beheld defied every nightmare. James lay entangled in the sheets, his bare chest pressed against Monica's equally unclothed body. Their expressions, caught in the throes of passion, froze as they noticed her standing in the doorway, face contorted in sheer horror. The world seemed to slow, as though time had collapsed into a singular moment of raw betrayal. Isabella's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't scream, couldn't cry, couldn't breathe. She simply stared, tears burning at the corners of her eyes, her mind reeling with disbelief. Monica was the first to scramble upright, clutching a sheet to her chest. James attempted to speak, but he was at a loss. The silence seethed, thick with guilt, shame, and irrevocable damage. Finally, Isabella found her voice. It tore out of her in a strangled sob, an anguished cry that shattered her entire existence. She turned and fled, ignoring James's pleas to wait, to talk, to let him explain. She didn't care about explanations. She needed to escape. She made it halfway down the corridor before her body seized with pain. A sharp cramp knifed across her abdomen. She gasped, arms instinctively wrapping around her belly. Was she about to lose her baby? Terror flooded her. She pressed the emergency button on her phone, collapsing onto the cold marble floor. The last thing she remembered was seeing James's face looming over her, pale and frantic, before darkness claimed her consciousness. When Isabella regained awareness, she was in a hospital bed. Her vision was blurry, her head felt heavy. A nurse hovered, checking her vitals. Nearby she glimpsed her father, Antonio Garcia, lines of worry etched across his weathered face. He rushed to her side, relieved to see her awake, but his relief was mixed with heartbreak as he told her that James was pacing the hallway. Despite his misgivings, her father had never wanted to see her suffer. Through tears, he explained that the baby was stable, but the doctors warned that any further stress could be disastrous. Isabella felt a swirl of conflicted emotions. She was relieved her child was safe, yet the pain of James's betrayal strangled her every breath. She winced when she saw James enter the room. He looked haggard, dark circles beneath his eyes, hair disheveled. He must have been there all night. Tentatively he approached her, tears in his own eyes. "Bella," he started, his voice low, trembling. "I'm so sorry." Antonio stood, glancing between the two of them. "I'll give you a moment," he said, though his tone made it clear. He had little sympathy for James. Once he was gone, James sank into the chair beside Isabella's bed. "I can't explain what happened," he began, voice cracking with desperation. "Monica, it started as a terrible mistake. I was lonely, we were drifting apart. She was there," he faltered, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I never intended to betray you, not like this." Isabella lay there in stunned silence. She felt numb, as though a glass wall separated her from the scene unfolding. Finally she rasped, "You slept with my best friend." James reached out, but she recoiled. "I know you hate me," he whispered, "but I love you. I love our baby. I'll do anything to make this right." "Leave," she managed. "I can't look at you." He hesitated for a moment, but seeing her resolute glare, he stood and slowly walked out. Only then did Isabella allow the tears to fall, burying her face in her pillow as sob after sob racked her body. At that moment, she felt as if every hope and illusion about her marriage had been shattered. In the days that followed, Isabella leaned on her father for support. She refused to see James, though he called repeatedly. Monica also tried to contact her, bombarding her with frantic messages begging for forgiveness, claiming it was all a terrible lapse in judgment. Isabella blocked Monica's number. She felt too raw to hear any excuses from the woman who had once been her closest friend. Eventually, her mother Lucia arrived from the Bronx, smoothing Isabella's hair as she cradled her distraught daughter. Lucia insisted they return home for a while, away from the opulent penthouse that now felt tainted. Isabella agreed, though she remained uncertain about the future. Her heart ached for the life she had dreamed of with James, for the family they were supposed to create together. But how could she forgive what she had seen? How could she mend a heart so deeply wounded? At her parents' modest home, she found solace in the familiarity of home-cooked meals, the squeaky floors of her old bedroom, and the chipped paint on the living room walls that had once annoyed her as a teenager. Each morning, she tried to focus on her health, on keeping her baby safe. She took long walks around the neighborhood, old memories swirling as neighbors she had known for years offered kind smiles and congratulated her on the pregnancy. No one knew about the betrayal simmering beneath her fragile exterior. One day, a package arrived for Isabella. Inside, she found an exquisitely wrapped box containing an expensive necklace, an emerald pendant that sparkled with a brilliance reminiscent of James's eyes. A note, scrawled in James's familiar handwriting, read, "This was my mother's. It belongs to you now. Please, let me see you." Isabella stared at the piece of jewelry for a long time. Finally, she closed the box. She was not ready to face him, not yet. Over the next week, her father noticed her internal struggle. Antonio had once admired James's ambition, but after witnessing his daughter's suffering, that admiration had turned to seething disgust. Yet he also saw how torn Isabella was. She was about to give birth in 3 months, and whether she liked it or not, James would always be the baby's father. Isabella could sense her father's turmoil. He wanted to protect her, but he also knew she might have to deal with James eventually, if only for the child's sake. Isabella's mother suggested therapy. "Your emotions are all over the place, Mija," Lucia said gently, placing a comforting hand on Isabella's knee. "You need guidance. You need to speak to someone who can help you find clarity." Reluctantly, Isabella agreed. She began seeing a therapist named Dr. Catherine Bradley, a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes and a reassuring presence. Week after week, Isabella poured out her heartbreak, her rage, her confusion. Dr. Bradley asked probing questions about Isabella's fears, her hopes for the future, and the reality of co-parenting with a man who had betrayed her so profoundly. Although the therapy sessions didn't instantly solve her problems, they gave her an outlet for her pain. Meanwhile, James continued to send letters, flowers, and gifts, each more lavish than the last. He wrote lengthy apologies, detailing the spiral that led to the affair. He claimed that after the initial guilt, he found himself too entangled in secrets to stop. Monica had reportedly pursued him relentlessly, but that didn't absolve him of blame. His words occasionally tugged at Isabella's heartstrings, reminding her of the charming man she had fallen in love with years before. Yet the image of him in bed with Monica haunted her relentlessly. Monica, on the other hand, was unrelenting in her pleas for forgiveness. She tried emailing Isabella from different addresses when her initial emails were blocked. Her tone ranged from sorrowful to frantic. She offered to pack up and move away from New York if that was what Isabella wanted. Isabella deleted each message unread. She knew she might have to confront Monica eventually, but not yet. Her pain still raged like a fresh wound. 3 weeks after leaving the penthouse, Isabella was awakened by her mother knocking gently on her bedroom door. Lucia's eyes glistened with concern. "There's someone to see you," she said hesitantly. Isabella's heart lurched. "James?" Her mother shook her head. "It's Robert Rothwell." Those words made Isabella's stomach twist. Robert Rothwell, James's father, had always been an intimidating figure. What could he possibly want with her now? Steeling herself, Isabella walked into the living room where the older man stood. He cut an imposing figure in a tailored suit, his silver hair neatly combed, his posture straight as a board. Yet there was an uncharacteristic softness to his gaze. "Isabella," Robert began, voice low. "I'm sorry for showing up unannounced, but I came to see how you're doing." She eyed him warily. "I've been better." She instinctively placed her hand on her baby bump. Robert nodded, his stern features tight with regret. "I'm aware of what my son has done, and I won't make excuses for him. But please understand, I never wanted this for you or for the Rothwell legacy." He paused, swallowing thickly. "James is desperate to reconcile. He's not in a good place, and I fear what this will do to him, to the child you both share." Isabella felt her temper flare. "He should have thought of that before cheating with my best friend." Robert sighed. "Yes, he should have. And he'll spend the rest of his life regretting it, I promise you that. But there's the matter of the company, of public perception. A scandal like this, if it goes public, could jeopardize not just James, but the entire empire. I'm here to ask, to beg, that you consider speaking with him privately. See if you can reach some agreement about your future. We can manage the media, but only if the two of you coordinate a statement or approach." An icy wave of realization washed over Isabella. Of course, Robert was concerned about the family empire. She couldn't entirely blame him. The Rothwells were used to controlling every narrative about them. Still, it stung to realize that, in his mind, she was potentially just another PR crisis. "I'm not sure I care about your company's image right now," she said flatly. Robert held her gaze. "I understand, but you must also think about your child's future. The Rothwell name carries weight, and with that come certain advantages. I'm not telling you to forgive James. I just want you to consider meeting him to talk things out privately." Isabella clenched her jaw. Part of her longed to slam the door in Robert's face. Another part recognized that, at some stage, she would have to decide how to co-parent with James. She couldn't just hide indefinitely in the Bronx, nursing her shattered heart. With a resigned sigh, she said, "I'll think about it, but I'm not promising anything." Relief flooded Robert's features. "That's all I ask." He gave a brief nod, turned, and exited the house with the same dignified stride he'd arrived with. Once he was gone, Isabella collapsed onto the couch, emotionally drained. She felt her baby move inside her, a gentle flutter reminding her that she was not alone. She whispered an apology to her unborn child for all the turmoil, tears gathering in her eyes again. A few days passed before Isabella mustered the courage to text James. She said she was willing to meet at a neutral location. "Immediately," James replied, suggesting they talk at a small cafe near the cloisters, a place they had once loved for quiet afternoons away from the city's clamor. On the appointed day, Isabella arrived wearing a loose-fitting dress that draped over her rounded belly. She spotted James sitting at an outdoor table, a baseball cap pulled low over his face, perhaps to shield himself from recognition. As she approached, he rose, and despite her resolve to remain composed, she felt a flicker of pity. He looked thinner, cheeks hollow, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. The guilt and heartbreak etched into his face spoke volumes. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, James gestured for her to sit. She lowered herself into a chair, mindful of her belly. He tried to help, but she waved him off. He cleared his throat. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." She nodded curtly. "Say what you need to say." James swallowed hard, hands trembling around his cup of coffee. "I don't know where to start. I messed up. It was the worst mistake of my life, and I can't take it back. I never wanted to hurt you." He exhaled sharply. "Monica came on to me one night when I was stressed. I'd been upset about our arguments, about business. She was there to listen, and it escalated into something it should never have become." He paused, a tear sliding down his cheek. "I should have stopped, but I didn't, and I have no excuse." Silence. Isabella's eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to cry. She wanted to remain strong. "Is it over?" she asked quietly. "Whatever was going on with Monica, is it done?" "Yes," he said fiercely. "I cut her off completely the moment you found out." He blinked rapidly, as though trying to hold himself together. "All I want is to be there for you and our baby. I understand if you can't forgive me, but please, let me be a father." Isabella stared at the table. She placed a protective hand on her belly. Her thoughts swirled. The pain, the love, the memories, the betrayal. "We need boundaries," she finally whispered. "I can't pretend everything is okay." James nodded, desperation lacing his features. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll move out of the penthouse if you want. We can find a separate space for you, or you can stay with your parents as long as you need. I just want to support you financially, emotionally, whatever you'll allow." She took a shaky breath. "I don't know if I'll ever trust you again." His face contorted with grief. "I understand." They talked for over an hour, discussing the baby's health, potential co-parenting plans, and the logistics of keeping the media at bay. Isabella insisted that her primary concern was safeguarding their child from public scrutiny. James agreed to keep everything discreet. She also told him about her therapy sessions, and he volunteered to attend counseling with her if she ever felt ready. She only promised to think about it. When their conversation ended, she stood, feeling more exhausted than she had anticipated. James reached for her hand. Instinctively she pulled away, and he withdrew, wounded. She walked away without a backward glance, tears finally spilling the moment she turned the corner. Weeks blended into a haze of uncertainty. The baby kicked more often now, an insistent reminder that life kept moving forward. Isabella clung to that, focusing on her upcoming due date. She drafted a birth plan with her doctors, choosing the hospital where she would deliver. James, true to his word, stayed away unless summoned. He sent monthly deposits into a new bank account for any expenses Isabella might incur, and had one of the family's lawyers quietly handle property arrangements so that Isabella could live wherever she pleased, without financial worry. Yet at night, Isabella's thoughts spun in chaotic loops. She hated how complicated everything had become, how the once simple love she'd cherished turned into a labyrinth of pain and mistrust. Sometimes she wondered if she had made a mistake marrying into the Rothwell family. Other times she gazed at her belly and remembered the gentle moments with James, how carefully he had kissed her forehead when she first told him she was pregnant. Love and sorrow clashed relentlessly in her mind. One afternoon, Monica showed up uninvited at Isabella's parents' doorstep. Lucia answered the door, her protective glare enough to send a pit of dread into Monica's stomach. Monica pleaded in a whisper, "Please, let me talk to her." Lucia stood firm, crossing her arms. "You've hurt my daughter enough. Stay away." She slammed the door. Isabella, who had overheard from down the hallway, felt a swell of gratitude for her mother's unwavering shield. But she also felt a stabbing pang once upon a time. Monica's presence would have lit up her day. The betrayal weighed heavily, like a cold hand gripping her heart. By the 8th month of pregnancy, Isabella found herself increasingly tired, her feet swollen, her emotions more volatile. The therapist guided her gently toward making a decision about the birth process, whether she wanted James in the delivery room or not. It was a question that haunted Isabella. She couldn't imagine enduring labor without someone to lean on, but after everything that had transpired, could she handle having James by her side? Seeing his face in such a vulnerable moment, she resolved to talk to James again. They met at the gallery he had once purchased for her. It was closed to the public for renovations, and the half-finished walls provided a sense of privacy. Standing amidst her earlier works paintings she had created during happier times, Isabella felt raw nostalgia envelop her. She remembered the day James unveiled the gallery as a surprise, how he'd knelt before her, kissing her hand, proclaiming his pride in her talent. James arrived wearing a simple sweater and jeans. No suits, no bodyguards, just a man burdened by remorse. They walked the echoing halls, glancing at the paintings. After a beat of silence, Isabella gestured to a painting of a vibrant sunrise that she had titled New Beginnings. "This was always one of my favorites," she admitted softly. It represented hope, a fresh start. James stared at it, tears glinting in his eyes. "I remember when you painted it. You told me it was about the promise of something beautiful just beyond the horizon." She nodded, inhaling slowly. "I'm about to give birth soon, and I need to know where we stand." She paused, glancing at him. "Do you still want to be part of this child's life? Beyond just providing money?" "More than anything," he said, voice choked with emotion. "Please, let me be there." "Then I need you to be honest," she insisted, "about your feelings, about what you expect from me. If you ever betray me again, I won't just walk away, I'll fight you for full custody." James nodded vehemently. "I understand." They discussed the birth. Isabella explained her therapist's recommendation that if she allowed him into the delivery room, she might need someone else present who could support her in case she felt overwhelmed by negative emotions toward him. James accepted the idea of a doula, or even one of her family members, joining them. He promised to adhere to her boundaries, to let her lead. At that moment, Isabella didn't promise forgiveness. She simply allowed him a chance to be a father, realizing that no matter how battered their love was, they were forever tied by the life growing inside her. For a fleeting moment, standing together in the gallery, they both gazed at new beginnings, silently wondering if there could ever truly be one for them. The night before Isabella's due date arrived, she found herself restless at her parents' home. She missed the penthouse's comfortable bed, the city lights she used to stare at while drifting to sleep. She thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the talks with James. She didn't know if their marriage could be salvaged, but she felt a sliver of calm in having a plan. At around 2 in the morning, sharp pains seized her. Her water broke. In a rush of panic, she woke her parents, who hurriedly called James. As paramedics arrived to help, Isabella clenched her jaw against the contractions, sweat beading on her forehead. Fear and excitement surged in her chest. She was about to meet her baby. Nothing else mattered at that moment. They reached the hospital, and James was already there, pacing anxiously in the waiting room. When he saw Isabella, pale and trembling, he rushed forward, offering his arm. She hesitated, then accepted it, letting him guide her into the delivery suite. Nurses hooked her up to monitors, and the hours that followed were a blur of excruciating contractions, beeping machines, and frantic nurses. Isabella felt pain tear through her, but she also felt James's hand trembling in her own, felt him whispering encouragement between surges of agony. When at last the baby's cries echoed through the room, Isabella collapsed with relief. Tears streaming down her cheeks, the doctor held up a squirming, wailing infant, tiny fists flailing. "A girl!" Isabella sobbed, reaching out to cradle the newborn. James stood beside her, speechless, tears carving silent paths down his face. In that moment, Isabella's heart swelled with both indescribable love and indescribable sorrow. Love for the precious life in her arms, sorrow for the fact that this perfect miracle arrived amid the wreckage of a marriage broken by betrayal. As the doctors and nurses cleaned and weighed the baby, James gently squeezed Isabella's hand. She allowed it, too overwhelmed by 1,000 emotions, to push him away. Their daughter, whom Isabella named Aurora, after the dawn she'd painted in her favorite sunrise piece, became the new center of both their worlds. In the days that followed, James hovered attentively, learning how to hold Aurora properly, how to change her diapers, how to soothe her cries with gentle rocking. Isabella watched him with a mixture of awe and lingering distrust. He seemed so genuine in his devotion to fatherhood, but a voice inside her reminded her of his capacity to lie. When they took Aurora home, it was to Isabella's parents' house, not the penthouse. James offered to stay in a hotel nearby, wanting to be on call for anything Isabella and the baby needed. Initially, she refused any help from him, convinced she could handle nights with the baby on her own. But after the third sleepless night, Lucia gently suggested letting James take a shift. Exhausted and emotionally worn, Isabella relented. Watching James cradle Aurora in the living room at 3 a.m, singing a lullaby in a hushed, shaking voice, Isabella felt tears slip down her cheeks once more. Time marched on, and Aurora blossomed into a healthy infant. Each milestone, her first coo, her first smile, brought cautious joy to Isabella. Meanwhile, James was unwavering in his dedication, showing up daily to spend time with Aurora. He also began attending therapy sessions separately, as well as a few with Isabella, at her invitation. Dr. Bradley guided them carefully through their mutual wounds. She emphasized that trust, once broken, could only be rebuilt over time through consistent honesty and accountability. Those therapy sessions were not easy. Isabella would often break down, recounting the trauma of finding James in bed with Monica. James, racked with guilt, would confess his failures and vow again to make amends. Isabella learned that some part of her still loved him, or at least the man she used to know. Yet she was terrified of letting down her guard, of feeling that knife of betrayal again. Eventually, Isabella agreed to visit the penthouse, to see if she could handle stepping inside what was once her marital home. James had cleared out any reminder of Monica, the clothes she'd left behind, the perfume she'd kept in the guest bathroom. He even rearranged the bedroom furniture, trying to give it a fresh feel. As Isabella walked through the rooms, memories assaulted her, the times she and James danced in the living room to no music, the times he carried her to bed when she was too tired to climb the stairs, the corner of the kitchen where they argued about how to properly marinate chicken. Echoes of a happier past mingled with the spectre of betrayal. She stopped at the threshold of the bedroom, heart hammering. James set a hand gently on her shoulder. "We can go," he whispered. "You don't have to do this today," she nodded, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "Maybe another time." They left, and Isabella exhaled in the elevator as though relieved to escape. She clutched Aurora close. The baby gurgled, seemingly unaware of the emotional storm swirling around her. Isabella realized that this was her new life, a series of small steps forward, each overshadowed by a painful past that refused to vanish overnight. Weeks turned into months. Aurora's presence became a healing balm, though not a cure. Isabella decided she would not finalize any divorce until she felt sure of her next steps. She refused to remain trapped in an unhappy marriage, but she also recognized that severing ties while postpartum might be too abrupt for her and Aurora. James took paternity leave from Rothwell Corporation, an unprecedented move that raised eyebrows in the business world. Robert Rothwell demanded an explanation, but James stood firm, explaining that he needed to prioritize his family now or risk losing them forever. Isabella was shocked. James had always revered his father's opinion. This newfound assertiveness suggested real growth, but she was hesitant to believe it would last. Meanwhile, Monica all but vanished from Isabella's radar. Through friends in Manhattan, Isabella heard that Monica quit her event management job and moved out of the city, presumably to avoid the scandal. While a small part of Isabella felt satisfaction that Monica faced consequences, she mostly felt an empty ache. She had lost a treasured friendship, another casualty of this fiasco. Gradually, Isabella allowed James to be present more often. He joined them for pediatric checkups, for Sunday lunches with her parents, for quiet afternoons in the park. He was careful never to overstay his welcome, always leaving when Isabella seemed tired or uneasy. Her parents, especially Antonio, remained guarded. Her father made a point to keep a watchful eye on James whenever he was around, as if expecting him to slip up again. But James never complained, willingly enduring the tension in order to be near Isabella and Aurora. Dr. Bradley continued guiding them through tough conversations. She recommended that if Isabella felt comfortable, she could spend some time alone with James outside the roles of father and mother, just as two individuals trying to figure out if their relationship could survive. Tentatively, Isabella agreed to a dinner in a quiet Italian restaurant she used to love, far from the paparazzi-laden hotspots. She picked a table in the back, away from prying eyes, and arrived trembling with nerves. James showed up on time, wearing a simple navy sweater and slacks, no flashy cufflinks or expensive watch. For a moment, Isabella glimpsed the man she had once fallen in love with, unburdened by wealth or pretense. Dinner began awkwardly, small talk about Aurora's teething, the gallery renovations, even the weather. But then James brought up the painful subject. "I want to tell you again," he said quietly. "I regret what I did every single day. I wake up wishing I could go back in time and never let Monica into our lives that way." Isabella swallowed, her appetite disappearing. "I still don't understand how you could do that to me, to us. Was I so unlovable?" "No," he shook his head firmly. "It was never about you. It was about my own flaws, my own insecurities. I was terrified of failing as a husband, as a father. And when you got pregnant, I felt trapped by my own fears. I clung to the wrong person at the wrong time." He closed his eyes, pained. It was a selfish, cowardly act. Tears pricked at Isabella's eyes. She wiped them quickly, not wanting to cry in a restaurant. "I don't know if I can ever forget that image of you two." He lowered his gaze. "I can't change the past. But I can promise you I'll spend the rest of my life showing you I'm worthy of another chance, if you can ever find it in your heart to give me one." They finished dinner with heavy hearts. As they parted ways, James gently brushed a kiss against Isabella's cheek. She allowed it, feeling a swirl of conflicting emotions. That night, she cried herself to sleep, clutching a pillow, painfully aware of how much she still cared about him despite everything. Seasons shifted, and Aurora celebrated her first birthday. Isabella and James arranged a small gathering at a family-friendly cafe. Balloons, a pink cake, and close relatives surrounded them. Aurora, sporting a miniature tiara, babbled happily, oblivious to the delicate nature of her parents' relationship. For this one day, no one mentioned the affair, no one brought up the precarious state of Isabella and James's marriage. They were simply two grateful parents celebrating their beloved daughter. After the party, as they cleaned up the mess of wrapping paper and leftover cake, Isabella caught James gazing at her tenderly. She paused, meeting his eyes. In the years since the betrayal, he had changed in ways she couldn't ignore, the humility in his stance, the sincerity in his every gesture. She had never seen him so open, so willing to admit vulnerability. "Bella," he said softly, "I know we've taken so much time, and I've respected your pace, but I can't hold it in anymore. I love you. I want our family to be together. If that's still possible." Her throat tightened. She hadn't worn her wedding ring in months, yet she had never asked for a formal separation. In therapy, she had touched on the possibility of giving their marriage another try, but only if she could genuinely forgive. She inhaled, heart pounding. Memories flashed, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the sorrow, then the therapy sessions. The quiet support, the fatherly love James had shown Aurora, his unwavering dedication. "I don't know if I can trust you completely yet," she answered, "but I do know I still love you." A fragile hope lit up his face. "That's enough," he whispered. "That's all I need to keep trying." That night, Isabella let James hold her as she cried for the loss of innocence in their marriage, for the friendship she had lost, for the year of heartbreak. He simply stroked her hair, murmuring apologies and promises. They didn't make love, but they did fall asleep in each other's arms, a tentative step toward healing. Recovery is never a straight line. Over the next few months, there were setbacks. Isabella would sometimes stumble upon a photo of Monica and James in her phone's gallery, or catch a whiff of perfume that triggered painful memories. She found herself snapping at James without warning, questioning his whereabouts at any slight delay. James, for his part, struggled with shame, sometimes wondering if he deserved to rebuild a life with Isabella and Aurora. But they persevered. Therapy became a cornerstone. Dr. Bradley guided them through couples exercises, helping them communicate honestly about fears and insecurities. Isabella learned to voice her anxieties, while James practiced radical transparency, sharing his schedule, texting her updates, introducing her to colleagues she didn't know, all in an effort to show he had nothing to hide. They also began re-exploring intimacy. It was awkward at first. Every kiss, every touch might spark a memory of betrayal. But slowly, the warmth returned. Isabella couldn't deny the chemistry that had initially drawn them together, and James approached her with gentle patience, never pushing her beyond her comfort zone. Eventually, Isabella proposed moving into a new home. The penthouse carried too many ghosts. James agreed immediately, selling it and purchasing a townhouse near Central Park, somewhere they could build fresh memories. They chose paint colors together. Isabella suggested soft lavender for the master bedroom, a symbol of tranquility. James set up a studio for her artwork on the top floor, where sunshine flooded in through skylights. Aurora's giggles filled the new space, her laughter echoing off freshly painted walls. Watching her toddle from room to room, babbling happily, Isabella felt a pang of gratitude. For the first time since discovering the affair, she allowed herself to imagine a future where they might be a family healed, stronger, bound by both love and the trials they had overcome. One evening, after Aurora had been put to bed, Isabella and James sat on their new living room couch, sharing a bottle of sparkling water. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and he rested his cheek against her hair. The hum of city traffic murmured outside, but within the walls of their home, they felt cocooned in a fragile peace. Quietly, James slipped a small jewelry box into Isabella's hand. "I kept this for you," he whispered. Inside lay his mother's emerald pendant, the same one he had gifted her before. She had never worn it. "It's yours if you still want it, or you can give it back and I'll understand." She swallowed back tears. This necklace symbolized both the wealth of the Rothwells and his mother's legacy. She lifted it out of the box, the emerald shimmering under the warm light. Slowly, she clasped it around her neck, meeting James's gaze. "I'm not ready to wear my ring again," she confessed. "But I'll try this." His eyes shone with gratitude. He placed a gentle kiss on the pendant, then on her lips, pulling her into a tender embrace. In that moment, Isabella felt the weight of the betrayal still lingering, but also the powerful pull of hope. They had come so far and had so far yet to go. Time passed. Healing continued at its own pace. There were moments Isabella thought about Monica, about how easily a friend could become a nemesis. She still felt pangs of anger, but she no longer let them consume her. The therapy sessions helped her realize that holding on to resentment only gave more power to the past. Letting go didn't mean forgetting it, meant choosing to focus on the present and future she wanted to build. Aurora grew rapidly, delighting them with her first words, her playful curiosity. Isabella returned to her painting, channeling her experiences into a new series she titled Fractured Reflections. Each piece portrayed shards of color and light, signifying something beautiful emerging from brokenness. At James's encouragement, she agreed to host a small exhibition in the gallery he had once bought for her. Deciding the time was right, to share her story through art. On opening night, Isabella stood at the center of the gallery, fielding congratulations from patrons and critics impressed by her emotive style. James stood by her side, pride radiating from him. They had yet to release an official statement about their personal crisis, but word had trickled through society circles about James's affair and the birth of Aurora. To the world's surprise, the scandal didn't topple the Rothwell empire, nor did it destroy Isabella. Instead, it reshaped them into something more grounded, more real. At one point, Robert Rothwell approached Isabella, gently embracing her. "Your art is remarkable. You've captured something raw and sincere." He looked at his granddaughter, who was in James's arms, cooing as she reached for the lights above. "I'm grateful. You've given my son a chance to do right by you and Aurora." Isabella offered a tentative smile. "I'm grateful he's been willing to change." Robert nodded. For the first time, Isabella sensed genuine warmth between them. The old patriarch seemed relieved that the legacy he had built would continue in a more compassionate direction. Months stretched into years. Life didn't become perfect, but it found a rhythm. Isabella and James continued counseling. She allowed him to move into the townhouse fully, piece by piece, though they agreed to maintain separate bedrooms for a while until she felt entirely comfortable. Gradually, that arrangement gave way to a shared bed, nights spent in each other's arms, still cautious but hopeful. Finally, on Aurora's second birthday, Isabella put on her wedding band again. It was a quiet gesture, no fanfare, no dramatic speech. James noticed it the moment she walked into the living room to set down the birthday cake. He caught her hand, eyes shining. She simply nodded, smiling through tears. That evening, after the guests had gone and Aurora was asleep, James knelt before Isabella. He slid his ring back onto his own finger. He had carried it on a chain around his neck. All this time, he gazed up at her with reverence. "We're far from flawless, Bella," he said softly, "but I vow to spend every day making us stronger." She cupped his face. "I'm willing to keep trying too." In that moment, Isabella realized that betrayal might leave scars, but scars can become part of a larger tapestry of resilience and love. They had weathered a storm that could have destroyed them. Instead, they stood together, forging a bond tempered by pain and redeemed by genuine effort to change. 2 years later, Isabella unveiled another art series, this one titled Bound by Dawn, dedicated to Aurora. In these paintings, a radiant sun broke through storm-clouded skies. Critics lauded the pieces for their optimism, for the way light triumphed over darkness. At the exhibition's launch, Isabella stood side by side with James, who proudly introduced her to influential clients and admirers. Aurora, now 4, clung to her father's hand, bouncing excitedly at the sight of so many people appreciating her mother's artwork. In the quiet corner of the gallery, far from prying eyes, Isabella kissed James's cheek. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with genuine gratitude, "for not giving up." He wrapped an arm around her waist, pressing his lips to her temple. "Thank you for allowing me back in," he murmured, emotion thick in his throat. They looked around, seeing the vibrant paintings that told the story of their journey from heartbreak to hope, from betrayal to renewal. And in that glowing space, with their daughter giggling nearby, Isabella felt a sense of peace she once thought impossible to reclaim. Their story was not a fairy tale. It was a raw, ongoing testament to the power of redemption, the complexity of forgiveness, and the unbreakable bond forged by love, no matter how terribly flawed that love might be. Every life holds the potential for heartbreak, but it also carries the seeds of healing and renewal. Isabella and James walked through fire and emerged with scars that told their story, a marriage nearly destroyed, friendships shattered, and a future hanging by the thinnest thread of hope. Yet, through therapy, open communication, and unwavering commitment, they nurtured their bond back from the brink. Their journey serves as a reminder that forgiveness doesn't erase pain, but it can transform it into a bridge toward deeper understanding. If you found this story compelling, please consider showing your support. Hit the like button, share it so others can journey with Isabella and James, and subscribe for more dramatic, real-life, inspired tales. Join us in exploring the raw emotions and powerful triumphs that shape our most profound relationships, proving that even in our darkest hour, a new dawn can still break through the shadows.